Hello, my name is Rafael Groman. I am an assistant professor of media studies with focus on critical platform studies at the University of Toronto and Department of Arts, Culture and Media and the Faculty of Information. My research focused on platform labor in Latin America, especially Brazil and now in Argentina. I am a principal investigator for Fair Work Project in Brazil and an international expert coordination of a European project called Platform Work Inclusion Living Lab, and I will be one of the co-editors of a new brand journal called Platforms and Society. That will be a forthcoming Sage journal that we will announce officially very, very soon. So in academia, we used in a critical way this word to name platforms, not only with the technological side. But platforms are at the same time infrastructures and software like apps, and also they are companies because Uber or TikTok are not only platforms. There's a political economy and value extraction behind them. So this is interesting because platforms and all this platformization of society, that means increased um, role of platforms in our everyday life to ask for a food, to ask for a ride, or to ask for a dating app, or or to see television through platforms. Platforms change our institutions, change our organizations, and change our everyday life. And now I am thinking about how platforms affect society and how people use platforms in different ways in their everyday life. So, and how platforms are means of communication too. And so, platforms are media too. Platforms are media infrastructures. So it's interesting, and I position myself as a media scholar to understand how labor process are changed through this platformization process, understanding both political economy and cultural studies too. In this fall term, I will teach a master course at the Faculty of Information called Political Economy and Cultural Studies of Information. And I will teach a little bit about this political economy and also cultural studies of platforms. So critical platform studies are a larger framework to understand these relationships between platforms and society. Uh, in the beginning, the scholars started to talk about gig economy and all this Uber and Uber Eats and DoorDash and something. They started to name as a gig economy. And for me, gig economy is not new in the majority world. Uh, in fact, gig economy is not a novelty in many parts of the world. Why? In countries like Brazil, India, South Africa, or Indonesia, um, gig is the norm of the working class historically because the informality is the rule for the working class, the informal work, the no traditional employment is the norm in the majority world countries. So I stress a little bit this concept of gig economy because for me it's so Eurocentric concept, and for me the novelty in the world of work is not the gig but the increased platformization of labor. And what this platformization of labor means. It means that we depend on digital platforms, especially on digital labor platforms, to perform our work activities beyond Uber and beyond the name gig. And this affects many and many sectors. Um, for instance, there are the most visible workers from like ride hailing and from delivery sectors that become more visible during the COVID pandemic because they were considered essential workers in many countries. So this is interesting because delivery workers in countries like Brazil and in other countries existed before digital platforms, but their work activities changed through these digital labor platforms through characteristics like uh, algorithmic management, which means they don't have a boss in some way, but the boss is an algorithm, and how there are automatic process behind the labor process that can be also more authoritarian in some ways. There are another differences relation to datafication or the increasingly data extraction from workers and from consumers that also contribute to this automatization of some process behind labor process. But beyond drivers and delivery workers, there are many different digital labor platforms. For instance, there are freelance platforms like 99 Designs or TaskRabbit or care work platforms and domestic platforms. So in Brazil, there's a platforms called Helpie, and these Helpie platforms, the consumer can ask for any kind of worker. You can ask for a doctor, you can ask for a teacher, English teacher, or dance teacher, or something. You can ask for a Santa Claus, you can ask for a DJ, and you can ask for a journalist. So this means that platformization of labor tends to generalization for all work activities. And beyond this kind of things, we can highlight some new work activities that born through this labor platformization, such as the AI trainers or data annotators for AI in platforms such as Amazon Mechanical Turk or Appen or Lionbridge. We discovered last year that um, to in order to ChatGPT exist, there was the need to many workers in Kenya train data for ChatGPT. This is what an author called Amit Ekbia called as iteromation. What is iteromation? Is the contrary of automation, because there was increased role of human labor in process that involve artificial intelligence. Again, only in Brazil, there are about 50 micro work platforms. Micro work platforms are platforms that workers use to be data annotators or work for click farm platforms, clicking and following um, social media accounts, even with fake accounts, and this kind of activities. And also, platformization of labor are not only related to digital labor platforms, but also social media platforms, because on TikTok or Twitch or YouTube, the creators also depend on digital platforms in order to perform their work activities as influencer or a fashion blogger or something. So even YouTube or TikTok are not designed to labor activities. There are workers that depend uh, of these platform architectures and platform companies in order to survive. So there are an entire ecosystem of workers depending on digital platforms to work and to survive. In the recent years, I balance my research agenda between the more dark side of platformization of labor, highlighting um, this so-called invisible workers through AI platforms and through click farm platforms and these power relations regarding these platforms. But on the other hand, I'm so interested on how we can change that. So I'm part of a project called Fair Work, and we evaluate digital labor platforms against decent work principles regarding payment, work conditions, which included safety, health, and so on, contracts, management, and representation, which means the collective voice of workers. So we are evaluating digital labor platforms in 38 countries through Fair Work Project. It's a multi-country project. I am the principal investigator for Fair Work Brazil. And we just launched the second report, and we are seeing that Latin America is the worst region in the world in terms to guarantee decent work principles. In Brazil, the best platform scored 3 in a maximum of 10. And this is so bad. And we need to fight for better and fairer um, work conditions in the platform economy. Also, because decent work is one of the sustainable goals for 2030. Um, United Nations. So we need to fight for that in many countries of the world. And for me, fair work principles are the basis for building a fairer platform economy. But for me, um, many in many countries there's a strong debate around platform regulation or how to regulate labor platforms in Brazil, in Chile, in Colombia, in the European Union, in the United States. There are many debates around how to regulate this kind of platforms in terms to employment classification and so on. But for me, regulation is not enough. And this is why I started some years ago to follow the work of a professor at New School in Newark called Trevor Shows that coined the name platform cooperativism, which means mixing the technological potential of digital platforms articulated to a more horizontal and democratic governance of co-ops and corporativism as a powerful tool to reframe a platform economy. This means that we need to build uh, alternative to big tech platforms and not only regulating the current system that already exists. So in the recent years, I've found an platform cooperativism observatory in Brazil. We produced 20 videos and a documentary um, talking about principles around platform cooperativism, such as decent work, data commons, open and free technologies, democratic governance, design justice to fight against algorithm bias and algorithm racism, and this kind of gender equity and intersectionality as lens for this perspective. So, uh, in Latin America and other countries from global south, we started to see how platform cooperativism land in different spaces, in different places, in different ways too. So we discovered that, and I discovered that with many other people, um, that platform cooperativism in Latin America don't don't doesn't mean necessarily building platforms, neither cooperativism. Why? In in Latin America, workers are not interested on only build platforms, and also they don't have the money to build like applications and so on. So they started to create many technologies like automated forms or WhatsApp chat bots and other kind of technologies. And also, many initiatives in Latin America are not necessarily cooperativism, but these initiatives build on cooperative principles, but actually they are collectives or social movements or other institutional designs and not only cooperatives. So I argue that in Latin America we have more there's more work on platforms or work on technologies in many ways. So these are the roots of my concern to write a grant proposal regarding work on platforms in Latin America. It's so good to work with workers and to research with workers. So, in this everyday research in the recent years, I saw many tech co ops in Argentina, and and no or minimum number of delivery worker co-ops. And in Brazil, I saw the contrary. There's many delivery worker co-ops and a minimum of um, tech co-ops. And now I was in Quito in Ecuador 2 months ago, and in a workshop about platform cooperativism in Latin America, and I discovered that in Colombia, in Ecuador, there are many care work and domestic platform co ops. So, this is interesting how research can collaborate towards a more collaboration between these cooperatives. In the cooperative principles, there's a principle called intercooperation, which means cooperation between cooperatives within the same sector and between sectors. So this is in the roots of my research, interested on that research, and and the final thing is that we started to see in Latin America many racialized collectives by queer people, black people, trans people, older people too, and for instance, in Brazil, there's a collective of delivery workers only with women, with cis women and trans people and called Senoritas Courier. And in Argentina, there's a tech co-op only by trans people. So this is an opportunity to understand better these initiatives and to help and to support um, their their development because I argue that worker-owned platforms are experimental, are prototypes, are prefigurative projects, which means they are know ready now, and they don't have a red formula. So this is a challenge because we don't want to romanticize these initiatives. Oh, they are warriors, or they are the best, because they are challenging, and they are fighting to survive in their initiative. So yeah, this is the these are some reasons to start this research. Yes, there is no only one profile of workers acting through digital labor platforms. For instance, in Brazil, the profile of a delivery worker is a black and young man, and people working through care work and domestic work platforms are more women here. So the intersectional lens are important to understand better how race and gender and class fractions and sexuality are important in terms to the identities of these workers, and how race and gender shapes the the capitalism and their work conditions. And also we need to understand intersectionality as a lens to build alternative arrangements to dominant platforms. So we need to create a more diverse, sustainable platforms, uh, including intersectional lens from Black people, from queer people, from also indigenous people, and Southern and Latin American perspectives too. This is important to foster more inclusive platform labor for the future. Yeah, I really like the term public scholar, or or a more like policy oriented scholar and social justice oriented scholar. Uh, this is not this is a little bit new for me. My training is not on action research, so I discovered during my last 5 years, and also through a Fair Work project. Because through Fair Work, we talk to workers and we talk to platform companies, and we analyze documents, and we try to pressure platforms to change their policies. And so we talk to other stakeholders like unions, like associations, like governments, policymakers, to talk about how these principles can be the basis for public policy. So in the last few years, and with this platform co-op research, to start a research with workers in a no extractive way, in a more collective way, and given and yeah, in a more collective way. This is so important for me, and this involves some dimensions. One of the dimensions is the research itself, and how it's so difficult to do to conduct this kind of action research, because the research never ends in this kind of ethnographic approach. And I just finished a revised version of a journal article today earlier, and it's the life flies. So it's so difficult to freeze the reality and to write a thing, because the things change a little bit. But it's so good to one of the thing is that this action research approach changed the way we research. Now I am preparing for the documents for ethics research committee and so on, and we are discussing together with the workers. Okay, what will be the next phase? Let's review our project together. So they are actually they are co-researchers of this research now, with like delivering tech co-ops in Brazil and Argentina. in the way we are promised to deliver a collective document in the final of research. So I'm feeling myself as more facilitator or organizer in a Paulo Freire situation. He's a Brazilian philosopher of education that states that the teacher or the professor or the researcher learn a lot through the learning process, and also the professor or the teacher is not um, the expert, but more a facilitator and the organizer. So I'm feeling myself in that position at UFT. In this challenge, the notions are so academic notions of authorship, because if I have to write a sole author book, who is the author of our research that is conducted in a collective way, and how to guarantee that all the voices are there and the voices of workers are not erased. So this is so challenging regarding like the university standard university norms, but it's so interesting, and I'm finding myself so happy at UFT to give me space to build this kind of research. So this is the first dimension. The second dimension is the research dissemination or the knowledge mobilization, because I I I, I, f- I funded in like 2019, like 4 years ago, a newsletter and a website called Gigi Labor. And through this website, I interview many researchers and many workers too. So this website was like is a hub for knowledge production and knowledge circulation on platform labor. And during this time, we organized many events, workshops, and also animated videos. We produce animated videos and documentaries. And now we will launch comics uh, on decent work and in delivery workers in Brazil. So this is another phase of this public scholarship, and how we need to diversify our forms to produce and publish knowledge and publish research. And in May 1st, we published a primer on digital sovereignty, co-created with the homeless worker movement in Brazil, because homeless worker movement, that one of the collectives involved in this new research. The homeless worker movement in Brazil has a technology sector with activist coders creating projects towards digital sovereignty from the working class side. So I got an internal grant from my Department of, of Arts, Culture, and Media, to co-create this primer, and we launched in first May. And this is a kind of experiment we do in this action research that never ends. And the third dimension, the final dimension, the research itself, the research dissemination, and the third dimension are public policies, or how the research can inform a more national public policies. In my case, for platform cooperativism in Brazil. So I will highlight two examples about that. Last year, I organized a workshop on platform cooperativism in a city in Brazil called Porto Alegre. That's a city with like many involvement with like social justice and cooperativism and solidarity economy issues. And after the workshop, we like researchers, social movements, workers, co-ops, and other policymakers wrote together a manifesto for public policies of platform cooperativism in Brazil. and a delivery worker from Senoritas Creators, a delivery co-op, sent our manifesto to all candidates of president, including Lula da Silva, that was the winner of Brazilian elections. So one of the first challenges when Lula started his new mandate is to pressure the government to start a new program on new public policy for platform co-ops in Brazil, because we discovered that Brazil has a recent history in the recent like 20 years in public policies for solidarity economy on one hand, and on the other hand on free technology and free culture or free software. But I realized that the people from solidarity economy never talked to the people from free software side. So Brazil has a history on that. So it's easier to start a new public policies, start from the articulation with the current body of policymakers that already exist now. So in 2 weeks ago, I went to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, with 100 of co-ops and social movements funded by Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. And I organized a workshop with the Brazilian government, with the Ministry of Labor here, and with the presence of nine ministers of like science and technology, labor, and cities, and others that I don't remember all of them. But uh, we offer a workshop to show and to train policymakers about this theme of platform cooperativism with all my co-researchers too, and also with videos from Argentina, videos from Spain, and so on, to sensitize the Brazilian government to start a new public policy for platform co-ops here. So the Secretary of Solidarity Economy here promised to us to start very soon a national program or national policy on platform cooperativism in Brazil. So for me, my new research can help, it can support um, this kind of public policies or this policy oriented research. So action research means for me a change in research itself, in the way of research dissemination, how research can impact public policies too. So for me, it's like my 24 hour uh, everyday life.